Back my panel with me now. And Matt Mowers, when you're looking at this and you're hearing what Governor DeSantis is saying there, making this argument also more broadly to voters that if they care about policy and these issues that Eva just laid out, that they should pick him. I mean, what happens if he doesn't come in that strong second place tonight? What is the message that they're sending?
Well, this is Iowa could be a springboard for Nikki Haley. It could be a pair of cement shoes for Ron DeSantis if things don't go well for him tonight. I know he's got a lot of events scheduled, but as one of the other panelists said, you're in this race until you're not. Governor Christie's a good friend. He had a full schedule set up for after Wednesday of last week and then dropped out on Wednesday. And so Ron DeSantis is going to have to look in the mirror and really decide, does he have a path forward here? Now, one thing a lot of candidates are looking for is what happens with the Supreme Court ruling in early March. And there's going to be a motivation for a lot of these candidates to try to play this out as long as possible. Most believe the Supreme Court's going to allow Donald Trump to be on the ballot. But every politician has a little grain of hope and a seed of hope in their mind, thinking maybe there's a chance they could absorb some of his voters if somehow he weren't on the ballot. So it's unlikely, but that goes through their mind.
Maybe they'll stay in the race longer, even if they don't do very well here in New Hampshire, because they're holding out hope that maybe something could trip up Trump down the road.
Well, now, the challenge for Ron DeSantis is he's running out of money. Right? And often you don't get out of presidential politics and presidential campaigns because you're losing. It's because you're broke. And so we're going to have to see how much money he actually has on hand if he comes in third place. That's going to dictate more than anything else how long Ron DeSantis is the candidate for president.
What are you hearing?
Look, I mean, this is the thing that donors are talking about right now, that if they do not want to support and keep funding a campaign that has such a narrow path, but I would also watch DeSantis, and he needs to ask himself, how lean is he willing to make his operation if he doesn't have a good night tonight? Because it's not unheard of for stubborn politicians to continue a presidential campaign if they can, and just cut it up as much as they can to continue. And that's a question that DeSantis is going to have to answer for himself. But again, I'm not sold on this being a bad night for Ron DeSantis yet. This is a state that he's focused on. He has a very serious ground operation there, and I'm terrible at predictions anyway. So, let's see it unfold. But again, the looming questions over this night, one of the big ones is Ron DeSantis going forward.
You did predict Michigan was going to beat Alabama,
but
we won't get into that. Jackie, if you're looking at Trump's mindset, as we so often do going into this, I mean, he's posting today criticizing Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, and Vivek Ramaswamy, probably most after Nikki Haley, writing today that he doesn't think she can win a general election because she doesn't have MAGA supporters behind her, that she never will. This is as close as he's probably gotten to complimenting Ron DeSantis, saying that he is MAGA light at least. But Trump says MAGA is almost all of the Republican Party, and saying that candidates who kind of are in the vein of Nikki Haley can't win a general election. I mean, that's the primary argument being made against Donald Trump himself.
Right. He has this way of trying to turn the argument around against him on someone else. But listen, he's going after Haley because he's threatened by her, particularly somewhere like New Hampshire, because if she's able to beat him in New Hampshire, that does show that it is a possible thing and could create a permission structure down the line if some people aren't exactly enthralled. Now, these are a lot of ifs. This is a lot of, wish casting for people who don't like Donald Trump and the Republican Party. But if he keeps spending money against her, if he keeps spending money, if he keeps talking about her, that's all you need to know. He'd be completely ignoring her if he wasn't threatened.
She's right. I mean, listen, Don Mattingly told Derek Jeter this one time, run it out because you never know who's watching. And right now, what you guys were talking about before in terms of donors watching this, they're closely watching this to see where DeSantis finishes. You're talking about leaning the operation. I don't even know if that's feasible in terms of what he did in Iowa. He hasn't really focused on New Hampshire. I know he's going tomorrow for a town hall. He's kind of shifted his focus to South Carolina, where he feels like he could win that state. Tonight is a pivotal night. We're going to wake up tomorrow morning, and either Ron DeSantis is still going to be in this race, we're going to get a surprise, or we're going to get chalk, like we say in sports.
We've talked a lot about the margins here and what Trump is aiming for, and he certainly would like to just kind of put this race to bed tonight. He is going after Vivek Ramaswamy, which I think is notable because he did get about 8%, I believe, in that Des Moines Register poll that came out on Saturday night. Is there a concern that he could cut into the margins for the former president?
I think it's a concern not just for Iowa, but also for New Hampshire, where Donald Trump really may need those votes. Vivek Ramaswamy and Ron DeSantis are usually juxtaposed between 6 and 5% in New Hampshire. Every vote may matter there. So I think it has as much to do with New Hampshire as it does with Iowa and what Donald Trump's saying about Vivek Ramaswamy on that. Look, I've talked to folks in the Trump campaign, and for months they've been talking about we want to win by at least 12. And so I know they're re-lowering expectations again today. Internally, their campaign team recognizes that the largest spread in history was actually Bob Dole in 1988 when he won by about 13 points. They figure if they can do that, they can claim history. But the challenge, of course, is this. He's not just running as an open primary field. He's running as a quasi-incumbent. And so they're going to have a lot of answering to do if he doesn't hit 50%. But regardless, the spread is what it is. He's clearly the front runner going into not just tonight in Iowa, but likely even New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If this thing goes on for a while and goes on to South Carolina, that is going to be the primary to watch, I think, because it is Nikki Haley's home state, because Ron DeSantis is flying there after Iowa, because Donald Trump is so popular there. Look, I mean, and because it's such a conservative state, I think that will be what's important to watch after this, if all of these candidates, or most of them, stay in this race.
But it's a lot of oxygen
Yeah.
between New Hampshire and South Carolina this year. It's something like 30 some days between the two. That's a lot. It's a lot of yes, a lot of money, a lot of time, and if that's where they're, I mean, if you're Ron DeSantis, you need money to enable to continue your campaign down there if that's where you're going to focus.
Well, it's beautiful because you can see that all of them have positioned each other in a different state. So Ron DeSantis is focused on Iowa, Nikki Haley's focused on New Hampshire. Donald Trump is not even looking at them. He's looking past them, to quote Jay-Z. Like, he's not even looking at these candidates. So he's focused on just hammering them tonight, winning New Hampshire. By January 25th, let's all rally behind me. If one of them wins tonight, or in New Hampshire next week with Nikki Haley, it's going to be interesting to watch. We're all eyes turned to South Carolina, that's for sure.
Safe to say, that's like 3 quotes that you dropped.
I know.
I'm
I got
really
like 5
impressed
more
by
if you
that.
let me.
That was really good. We need the rest of the panel to drop some quotes. Thank you all.